In this video, we're going to look at how to read public opinion polls. It is not uncommon to see news headlines that have been crafted around the results of an opinion poll. And many organizations do this. They will produce stories based on the findings of the latest opinion poll. There can be a lot of different headlines generated or different stories composed based on a single package of opinion poll results. So it's important to differentiate between the actual underlying data and then the headlines and stories that can get produced by that. The first place to look when you're trying to do that would be the summary. The summary is just an overview of what the poll found and the methods and just the general themes from the responses. Here's an example of what one might look like. They have a narrative explanation of the findings. There's some graphics and explanations of the response breakdowns. These are useful for help understanding the results if you don't have an overly technical background, and it's also good for people in the media. This is what reporters get. This is how news content is created, typically from these summary documents. You can also go a bit deeper and look at the technical report from the poll. That's the more detailed examination of the findings. And as you're looking through those documents, one thing you will find, one term is top-line results. Top-line results are just the general set of responses to a question. So yes or no, satisfied or dissatisfied in this case. It'll give you the general breakdown. How many people responded satisfied? How many people responded dissatisfied? And was there any don't know or refused to answer? It's just a general sense of how folks answered. And in this case, you'll sometimes get a picture of the same question over time to see if anything's changed. This is useful, but it doesn't tell us a lot about who those folks were. Who were those people that said they were satisfied? Who were those people that said they were dissatisfied? To get into that level of detail, you might need to look at what are called crosstabs. Most sort of technical manuals and sometimes even the summary might include a crosstab section. And that is where the responses will be broken down according to different characteristics: sex, age, education, potentially geography, or political ideology. In a place like Canada, something like region might be useful. Western Canada versus Central Canada versus Quebec. Here's an example of a breakdown of a poll from President Trump's time in office. You approve of the way he's handling the economy, approve, disapprove. Well, aside from the top line, what does that tell us? Is there a pattern in the demographic breakdown? What about by age? What about by education? A lot more interesting results when we look at the crosstabs compared to the top line. And then the methodology. The methodology describes to the reader how the poll was conducted. It's just a look under the hood so we know what the polling firm was doing to produce these results. Another thing you want to look at is the actual list of survey questions, or what's sometimes called the code book. You want, if it's an online survey versus a phone one, there will be a list of questions, potentially with a script. If it's an interviewer, there will be a script for the interviewer to ask the questions. This will help you, again, understand what the voters were either looking at or reading or hearing when they were responding to the survey, because the question order could influence the way they respond and the way the question responses are given. So this is a good way of understanding how those results were reached. Important to look at the questions themselves when you're trying to interpret and understand a poll. Another kind of opinion poll, it's slightly different spin on it, that you might encounter at election time is called an exit poll. Opinion polls are typically taken before an election, but an exit poll is taken after people vote, typically on election day. And what happens is volunteers or people that will typically work for an organization will stand outside the polling station and ask people how they voted when they leave the polling place. They're going to ask a bunch of questions about who they voted for, why, what issues were important. Helps understand the electorate, helps understand who voted, who actually turned out, and what issues were important to them when voting. It can also give a preview of election results. If exit poll data comes out in the middle of the afternoon, it might give you an idea of who's going to win when the final results are announced later that evening. Some jurisdictions, Canada for example, has laws that prohibit the publishing of exit polls until the polls close, because it could influence the results, especially when you're looking at large geographic countries with different time zones. Just to recap, when you're reading an opinion poll, you want to be wary of the headlines because there can be different descriptions generated from different polling results. So take a look at the summary, take a look at the technical details. Look for those top line results, look at the crosstabs to see if there's any meaningful breakdowns in the data, and then the statement of methodology. Statement of methodology will tell you a little bit how the poll was conducted, and that's something we'll look at next.